Nate. That was easy. We are all sorts of live and stuff, I think.
Should we feel different now?
You should feel like a star. Do you feel like a star?
I don't know. The blood is still rushing out of my head. Since Kelly came on, I have no blood left in my head.
Have you ever? You had to have talked to Kelly at some point, right? In your illustrious old man career.
Nope. Nope.
No, we've not. We've not
Nope.
actually,
What?
no.
I have watched her play hundreds of times.
So I'm a terrible host. I
No,
should have been introducing you to. I'm so sorry. Old man creepy Rob, meet Kelly. Kelly, meet old man creepy Rob.
Oh, that's nice. Hello, Rob. How you doing?
yeah, my heart rate went as soon as your picture came on the screen. My heart rate went like this.
Oh, be careful.
That's
It's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Yep.
Very nice to meet you.
So everybody that's tuning in, we are going to be talking about all things pool, just like always. We have the Brady Bunch style right here. We got Rob Hovick. What's up, Rob? In
Right
shock.
here, buddy.
In shock
Yep.
currently. Straight down, we got Mike Howerton. Mike, how's it going?
Good, good. How's everybody doing?
Demetrius over there somewhere. Demetrius, what's up? He's trapped in his box, apparently.
I'm trying to figure out which way to look. Yeah, hi, everybody.
And, of course, all the way down at the bottom, we got Kelly Fisher. She doesn't need any introduction. Everybody knows her.
Hi, everybody.
Hair
Nice to be on
looking
here.
fantastic as always.
Sure? Are you sure, Nate?
It is perfect as always. Don't worry. Well, we are here to talk some CLP, some Matchroom Championship League pool. We're going to start right there. Of course, I mean, where else can we really start? Anytime Matchroom has any event in the world, it's, that's kind of it, right? Everything else takes a back seat. So, Kelly, before we even, I guess, jump into it, why don't we get your opinion on it? Because, of course, you played 3 days in it. So tell us what you thought.
Well, yeah, Nate, it was, I knew it would be a fantastic event, but I kind of didn't know what to expect, it being with no audience behind closed doors. And, to be honest, what a fantastic job they did. The actual arena, when you were in it, you really felt like there was a crowd. And how to explain that is it must be just the way they set it up. It really didn't, you didn't miss the crowd, put it that way. You really felt like it was a true, normal arena like we're always used to. And the atmosphere was electric. And they did a fantastic job. The format, in my opinion, was some people are for it, some people are not for it, but most of the players, I'd say 90% of the players, if not more, loved it. We got multiple match play, and it was a great, exciting format. You're on the edge of your seat for the fans and for the players too. There was matches, you were finding out last match how many racks you needed just to get through and things like that. It was really exciting. I think it's just what we needed for pool, and what a welcoming a breakthrough from lockdown. What a great event to start with.
Yeah, and if I remember right, I think Albin wins the event. Spoiler alert! But I think, and I actually predicted that, by the way. But I want to say that he played 55 matches in total. That's a lot of pool. 55 races to 5.
Absolutely. I mean, it was tired on day 2. I mean, day 1 went 11 hours for me, and he got through to semifinals. So he calculated it was 13 hours. Day 2 for me went 13 hours because I got to the final. And day 3, they brought in the shot clock. So I think it was 9 hours. And day 4 it was another 9-10 hours. But I didn't get through to the final. So, you're talking 11 hours per day for him. And he had 6 days straight of it. I know I was tired. I'm a bit older than him, but maybe not as fit as him. I was tired. So I can only imagine after 6 days of it, he must have been exhausted.
So before we jump in, this is just a question for me. Take us through what was happening behind the scenes, because of course you're in a bubble. You're with, these are all your friends, right? I mean, you travel with a lot of these. I mean, it's no secret that most of these were Europeans. They're your friends. You see them at Euro tours. You see them traveling to China, the U.S. What was behind the scenes like there as far as the entire atmosphere?
Well, we had a nice players' lounge where we had the TV set up watching the matches. There was food supplied to us, breakfast, lunch, dinner. The service as a whole was fantastic. We got takeaways if we needed, and they would deliver to the lobby. So you found some players, most of the players actually were hanging around the players' lounge watching, sweating the matches, because the good thing about it was everybody that was in the tournament was there. So day one, everybody that was there on day one were in the tournament. And day two, you had two new, and the others probably went home, or, so everybody was in the tournament, still in the mix. So there were so many of us sat there sweating the matches. If we weren't playing, you sat there, just trying to see what everybody else was doing. And because that affected you. So it kept the days went quick. You'd have thought it would be so boring. I would only imagine for the likes of Chris Mellon, I saw him every day because he did a lot of commentating, but he would have been bored because he went straight through on day one and had to hang around for a week. We weren't allowed out as far as we couldn't go to the shops or anything. Not that there's anything really open apart from grocery shopping. But we were asked not to do that, of course, because of the risk of the infection or bringing the virus in to the bubble. So basically, we were allowed out to go for exercise once a day or walking, fresh air, things like that, of course. But so I weren't bored one bit. And I think only players that got through early on could say they had any days that they could have been bored, but the tables were there for them to practice. And the players are good fun. We kept it light. It was good fun. We were shouting at the TV, and it was good. I enjoyed every minute.
Cool. Well, Mike Howerton, let's go to you first. The question is, what did you think of the event? You've been covering this sport for 5 or 6 months only. We won't age you.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've seen anything like this in my lifetime. So what do you think? What do you think of the event?
I'm curious because this was based on a snooker event with a similar format. So I'm curious how the snooker event went. It was an interesting format, and my only complaint was, there were two. One being that it seemed like there were a lot of repeats, and based on that format, there were a lot of times that you were seeing somebody playing, Kelly playing Nils again, Kelly playing Christina
who she beat up on pretty good.
So that it kind of got a little old seeing the same pairings, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it could have been. I guess my biggest complaint was that with the format, we didn't see the best games from the players late in the day. You came in fresh and you were probably playing, and Kelly can comment on this certainly. Did it feel like you were playing your best at the beginning of the day, or going into the semifinals 11 hours later?
Well, I mean, there's two ways to look at that, because on day 1 and 2, I would say day 2, obviously I got to the final, so I'm going to be able to use that example better. But for me, day 2, I started off great. I had a lull in the middle, and then I finished good enough to get through to the semis. But as the day went on, I felt like I was getting, day 1 and 2, I was getting more used to the table, getting more used to the setup. I was more comfortable. So I felt my game was just improving as the day went on into the night. But then when it comes to day 3 and 4, I would say I was feeling certainly more fatigued by the evening on both them days. So for new players coming in, I think it was great because you could see some of them flew off to a great start and didn't finish well, or vice versa. It all depended, on obviously the matches, how they went. Two ways to look at it. I enjoyed it because I felt like, right, I'm getting going now, and I got used to things. By day 1, I was certainly had enough matches under my belt to have adapted to the surroundings, and that's why I felt I played really well on day 2. But I do understand thereafter it becomes quite difficult to keep up that energy for 11 hours, after you've been doing it day after day. So Albin did remarkably well.
Oh yeah, and with that complete being said, I don't know of a solution. I don't know of a different way that the format could have been tweaked to do away with that issue. So yeah, that was.
Well,
it was great to see Pro Pool. It was great to see the players again, and actually have something going on in the game for us all to follow. But yeah, that was my primary complaint. You know me, I'm normally right up there with complaints right away.
well, the snooker guys, actually, when we arrived, I arrived a couple of days early, and being on day one, I arrived on the Saturday. So we didn't start till Monday, and the snooker guys were still playing. They were still finishing up their tournament. So I got to kind of see, theirs is a little different, slightly different, but still they were playing late at night too, and early in the morning, earlier than us actually. But I do think that obviously snooker being a longer game, I think they had to separate it. And I know talking to Emily, there was something, I may be saying something wrong here, but obviously they've got the rankings already in place and a ranking structure. So I think they can pull players in on different days and do only a select amount of matches. Whereas us, we haven't got that ranking structure, so we were having 7 in one day. So I think later they might be able to take it over a longer period of time. So you've got more than 7 days, if you like. I'm not 100%, but I think everybody thought it were a bit maybe too long.
Okay.
Demetrius, did you have any thoughts on it that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I really like the fact that Matchroom is mixing up the format and trying some different things. I really like the idea of the players getting multiple chances to qualify and seeing how play evolves day after day. I think in a lot of double elimination tournaments, you just get to see these real short snapshots of a player. You don't really get to see the full story arc of their journey through a whole competition, and I really like that. I've got two quick questions for Kelly. One, I know that a lot of players, spectators, I should say, following pool, there's always a little bit of concern in the pool world about, not the integrity of round robin, but just even if everyone's completely on the square trying their hardest, once people have been eliminated or once people feel that, their chances are, it's hard to maintain the same intensity. Do you feel like there was any impact? How did that actually play out in the event? Was there any impact from players that were kind of eliminated, playing softer in the later stages of the event, or did everyone play hard the whole way, to your estimation?
Well, I actually was saying that, even down to the very last day, we saw their Niels playing, and we also saw David and one of the guys, couldn't get through, but they were playing their heart out. The good thing that the way they structured it was that based on where you finished, you got different money, you got higher money. So even if I knew I couldn't get into the final 4, but I was safe to get into day 3, for example, I still wanted to play my heart out because winning that extra match could have moved me up and got me more money. So, that was a good thing behind it. At first, I was kind of unsure why we were doing a semi-final final. After I kind of thought in my head, because I got it wrong. When I arrived there, I misunderstood it at the beginning. Luckily, not before I began playing. But I basically thought, where you finished that day, that was your position. And if you finished number 1, then you went through. And then I kind of thought that number 1 went through, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 played off. Number 6 got paid and got nothing, and 7 went home. But again, I realize now why. I asked the question, I realized why they did it. It was to stop any of that, because if everybody's fighting not only to get through to the next day, but to get into that top 4. So all the way down to your last match can influence not only your pay, but also your chances of getting into that final 4. And then you've got a chance to win it. If you don't get in that 4, you don't get a chance to win it. So no, the answer to your question is actually I never saw anybody lightening up in any way, shape or form, because everybody were in for it to try and get through to the final 4, chance to win it, or for more money.
Well, I'm glad they found a way to make that work, because it's a really interesting format. I really enjoyed it. The other question, after being kind of head-to-head competition. I mean, we've been playing ghost champions, ghost challenges and ghost matches and ghost. And the parts of the ghost that we don't practice as much are, it's hard to practice the moving game, the kicking game, and just kind of coming with those hard shots when you're in a short set and you've got to come with a shot. What did you feel like, not just for yourself, I guess for yourself and for the field, do you feel like you were on top of your moving game the way you'd like to be, or do you feel like there was some rust either from you or from the field in general? How did that play out, kind of getting back to real traditional competition?
Well, I was worried about that, of course. I mean, I had a practice session with a good friend of mine who's, Connor is a decent player, and in the first few racks, I kept picking up the white. I kept picking up the cue ball.
That was going to be my question to follow up on that. Is how close were you to pick up the cue ball?
That'd be embarrassing.
You can't do that. You can't. That's right. What are you doing? So, I mean, I really worked hard a couple of weeks beforehand to make sure I did not pick up the cue ball. That was the first thing.
Did you ever get close?
But yeah, I was a bit concerned. No.
Okay.
I must have changed mode back. Yeah. So I was concerned about the safety play. That being something that obviously in Ghost Pool we don't do, and also kicking. So leading up to the tournament, I did work on that and jumping. Thanks, Nate. But no, we'll talk about it later. But no, the kicking and the safety, I really did work on that a lot leading up to the tournament. And I think for me, one thing I saw different in my game this time compared to normally, because of Ghost Pool and Virtual Pool, is I was more attacking. So I weren't even contemplating that bank. I weren't contemplating, that shot where I have to come round 3 rails, or should I play safe? Whereas before I would have, and maybe chose a safe option. I just knew that by the Ghost Pool that I could do it because I've been doing it. So I think the Ghost Pool, Virtual Pool, and the fact that I played all year round in everything that I possibly could did me a lot of favours. I would say with some players, you could see a little bit, the ones that had been and the ones that hadn't been here and there, the inconsistencies in some players. I don't want to mention any names, but yeah, there's certainly some players that I would definitely said that I could see that there was some rust going on. For me, I didn't really feel it. I just, maybe a little bit with my safety. Push out was an interesting one. I had 1 or 2 push outs that I thought, I wasn't as sharp on that front. I must be honest, I never thought to practice that. So the push out caught me once or twice, just not as clear and sharp and as quick to make that decision. But other than that, I was, I felt pretty solid really, for most part.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, that's great. The preparation is a big part of that. So I can see just, I know that after playing a bunch of Ghost, I know that when I first started kind of playing with people, my safeties were, I was very confused as to what to do. It was almost like I forgot, just those little kicks and those little saves. So putting in some sparring and really understanding that ahead of time puts you in the category of the people that didn't have the rust. And good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Rob, what do you got? You want to ask any questions?
I have a question for Kelly, and this would be a question I think that all pool players all over the world would be interested in hearing the answer to this. I think I know that I am. I think professional athletes have a unique gift of being able to have what they call a short memory. In regards of, we all make mistakes, and no matter how good we are, we're going to make a mistake, and we know that going in. Do you personally have any practice tricks that you use to create that short memory feeling in your brain? Say you're playing in a match and you make kind of an unforced error. And you really have to short memory that. You can't let that linger.
Especially in these race to 5 formats.
I can remember a shot in one of the tournaments where a competitor kind of slopped the ball in. And then a shot later, it wasn't an easy shot, it wasn't difficult either, but she missed it. And the commentator had said, I wonder if this is going to make a difference in her future play, that she got fortunate on that one shot. And we do see that in pool, that you get this guilt feeling. And I know professional golfers, they always talk about their short memory when they hit a bad shot. And I'm curious. Do you work on that part of the game at all? And if you do, what do you do for it?
Well, Rob, I forgot what you said already. No, I'm joking. I short memory.
I see what you did
You have
there.
a short memory. Pretty
Yeah,
good.
that one.
That was
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
funny.
yeah. That's me practicing. No, to be honest with you, no. The answer to that is no. I don't have any tricks, any practice tricks to that, um, to do or improve on that. However, I do think that as a amateur, semi-pro, or professional player, the only way that you can really improve that skill, if you like, is just by pure and utter match practice. So, in other words, tournament after tournament, winning, losing, missing, making balls. That experience, there's unfortunately no magic trick. There's no drill that you can really get that from, in my opinion. It's just that it comes down to the experience. And I think that the more you train, the more you practice, of course, in your game, then you go to a tournament, and whatever mistakes you make, at the beginning, I used to remember I could tell you every single ball that I missed in a full match of snooker when I was young. Now I couldn't even tell you.
Well, there was only 6 of them, right?
I wish. Now I couldn't even tell you what mistakes I made, apart from the odd one that stick out in my mind that cost me, severely or whatever. But yeah, I do think that everybody's very different, and maybe that's just me. When I'm practicing drills and when I'm practicing on my own, one thing I personally don't do, and I see a lot of players do, is if they're practicing a shot that they're missing, they'll keep on doing it and keep on missing until they make it. And then they maybe only make it a couple of times and think, oh, that's good. I've got it now. And I kind of do it a little bit differently. If I'm missing that shot over and over again, I stop and I go to a different shot. And I'll put some balls. I'll forget about it. I'll put it in the box, play some other shots, get my confidence back, and address it later. If I'm wanting to continue it, I'll make sure that I equally make that ball, if not more, than I missed it. So whether that's a little trick to forgetting it by actually just stopping and doing something different, that might be one way to maybe suggest for players. There's different ways you can train, but that's just the way I do it.
Rob, I'm gonna jump in with one thing. I've had a couple players that have come and trained with me that have don't have the match experience. I mean, I agree with Kelly. You play the matches, you go through the highs and lows, the wins, the losses. Eventually, it stops being such an emotional roller coaster because you've been through it too much. But I've had some players that really get emotional. They're amateur players that are trying to break into more competitive situations, and they really get derailed sometimes when they make mistakes. They play good as long as they're playing perfect, and then as soon as they make an error, they really get upset and all these things. And I'm not saying that this is great training, by the way, but I've had a couple people that get so frustrated with mistakes that I've actually had to practice having them miss the 9. I've set up a 9 ball. I said, I need to see you miss this shot. I want to see you overcut the 9 ball to the end rail and just go back to your chair and sit down like you made it and everything's fine. And it's funny because of course we have more conversation about approach and mental game and just kind of what we're trying to do at the table and what the competition looks like. But it's funny, I don't have to have them do that very much. I might have them do that twice, and somehow having them practice missing the 9 twice, I think it's memorable enough because it's just not something that they would normally ever do. And so hopefully that helps them remember, that somehow that everyone's going to make mistakes, and it's how we react to the mistakes. A lot of times that's what's going to determine the outcomes. And so you can practice reacting to mistakes. I don't necessarily advise practicing missing balls on purpose, but I think you can practice how you react to mistakes when they come up.
Yeah, I mean,
would you all agree?
Sorry.
Would you all agree to some extent that in pool, especially I think in pool, because it's a tunnel vision sport. You're not outside doing something in open air with all kinds of atmosphere around you and things, that if you view it as living in the moment, and the moment is that, and that's all that matters in pool, is that moment. And no matter what the outcome of that moment, once it's over, it's done. And you can't bring that moment back.
That's right.
So there's no sense being emotional about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier said than done for sure. But that's right.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. I agree. You know, you've got to, even sitting in the chair, you know, there's different tips, techniques, breathing, what to think about, what not to think about, watching your opponent, watching the floor, looking at across the room. You know, everybody's got slightly different in the way they deal with it. But, you know, I've always been taught, we're starting very young. When you're younger, you've got such a carefree attitude, you know. You miss a ball, you don't even, you may be annoyed, but then you're straight back on the table because you think you can fight the world and you'll never miss again. And maybe from starting so young, it's gave me that, you know, that attitude that when I'm sitting in my seat, I do try every way I can. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm no robot, and sometimes it does get the better of me, but I try every moment I can to think forward. Right, just give me one more chance. Let me back to the table, as opposed to thinking what I've already done, you know. And sometimes I'll focus on their game and see if I play it this way, I play it that way. Sometimes I look at the floor, or looking on a certain spot on the wall, whatever. But I do try and stay in the moment and try to look forward and just basically know that I'm going to get another chance at some point, and wait for that opportunity, and, you know, focus on what positive impact I'm going to do when I do get to the table. Easier said than done, but you know, especially when you're losing, when you're missing multiple mistakes, it's hard. But yeah, that's the only way you can think, is positive and forward, as opposed to negative and backwards. Otherwise, that will really kill you in the game.
I've got one more question for you, Kelly. How do you feel that your snooker background has enhanced or helped you with your pocket pool?
Yeah, I mean, I do think for sure, you know, it's helped me tremendously. And the main reasons I think for it basically is the technique, the straight cueing. I'm not saying that pool players don't have that, because of course they do. But for me personally, going from snooker to pool, certainly the snooker technique, the potting, the shot making, obviously coming from a larger table, playing on much longer shots, coming to a smaller table. Not that I can remember what the larger table looks like now, but when I first come over to America, you know, a long shot on a 9-ball table looked like a really short shot on a snooker table. So, you know, it allowed me to adapt quickly. It certainly allowed me to maintain good shot making. But 9-ball's got a whole lot to learn, which snooker couldn't have helped me. The jumping, Neight, and the kicking, the banking, the kicking's totally different. Safety play's totally different. So there's a lot of areas, the breaking, that I had to learn from scratch. But definitely on the technical fundamentals, shot making side, I would definitely say snooker tremendously helped me, yeah.
Sure.
All right, so
and mental side as well. The mental side as well. Yeah.
So Gloria had a question quite a while ago. Is there anybody on your radar that you're now that things are kind of opening up, that you would like to play?
Male or female? I wonder if she means. I suppose she yeah, doesn't really.
Open-ended.
No, to be honest with you, I've not got anybody specific. You know, I wish I could have played maybe Jason or Shane again, but they weren't, unfortunately, there at the event. But again, I'm not specific. I'm just happy to be playing in tournaments. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy that I came out in the first event, out the gate, and I've done all right. You know, I played well. The main thing is win or lose, is that I'm happy with my game. And lockdown has certainly allowed me time to improve on areas of my game that prior to that I weren't as comfortable with, especially my backswing. I've had trouble with that for years now, and I finally feel comfortable with it. So, you know, I'm really happy that I'm just feeling that after winning the World Championships, everybody thinks, oh, yeah, you must be at the peak of your game. Well, I felt like I was coming into the peak of my game, and then lockdown happened. But instead of a negative, I kind of trained even harder. And, I feel like I've improved since that 2019 World Championship. So, I'm looking forward to the season ahead. I hope I can, start off as I left off on the women's side and continue in the mixed events, doing well and playing some good matches against them guys and knocking them down a peg or two.
And getting ready for the World Cup of Pool, huh?
Yeah, I really am excited about that, Nate. Me and Alison are going to firstly have fun, enjoy every moment, but I really hope we can do some damage. That'd be great.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so we all got our little introduction in for Kelly. I guess I'll say one thing about the event. Being the promoter that I am, I always try to nitpick other people's formats, other people's tournaments, and just try to think of ways that it could be better. And I was driving back from the gym yesterday, and I was thinking about it while I was at the gym, and I'm trying to think of all these things that could make this event better. And every time I'd come up with something, I'd be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Oh, wait, that would lead to this. And then it would be worse. And I'd come up with something new. Oh, yeah, that would lead to this. And what I ended up coming up with was this event it's really well thought out. It's really, really, really well done. I mean, I don't know how you could possibly make this event any better without losing the integrity of the round robin format. I mean, you can't add. I thought about trying to get 2 players out per day, or eliminating 2 players per day, and it just doesn't work. I mean, of course, at the end of the day 7, Dennis Grabe I thought played the best of anybody on day 7, but you get to that semifinals and it doesn't do you any good if you win the group. Atlanticaci saw that in the first day. There was I think there was only, by the end of it, I think only one person, it was David Al-Qaidi, that was the number 1 seed going into the semifinals and actually won. So, it doesn't do you any good really maybe there's something you can do right there where you only allow maybe the top 2 instead of the top 4, but the semifinals are just so exciting. Why would you want to mess with that? So I think, I would just say, I think the Matchroom really has an event here, and I think it's a really good one. So, with that, let's actually jump into the event itself. Let's look first off at I will move this because somebody requested that. Let's look at the money one. Of course, Albin Ocean won the event, so he took the most amount of money. Although there is a very, very real situation where he didn't have to win this event, or he didn't have to have the most amount of money even if he won this event. In fact, he beat David Al-Qaidi in the finals. If David would have won the finals, he still wouldn't have made as much money as Albin, which is kind of interesting. But looking at the money won, Albin Ocean won $16,200. Niels Fine won $9,500, which is actually kind of interesting because he only made $1,000 in that final group. I'm pretty sure he finished bottom, right? And yeah.
Yes.
Yep. David Al-Qaidi wins $7,400. Atlanticaci won $7,250. Mark Biesterbosch, who only played actually in 3 days, made $7,200. So he took pretty good advantage of the small amount of time he was there. Miensko Fortunsky, who didn't even make the final group, made $7,000. So that's a good finish for him. I think he joined on day 2. Is that right? Day 2, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was there for 6 days, so he racked up a good amount of money. Naoki Oi joined on day 4. Yep. He made $6,750. Chris Melling, who of course won the day 1 and made $4,000 there, only added to $2,000 to that total. So I think that's where we can start at this conversation. He made $6,000. Billy Thorpe made $5,350. Kelly Fisher made an amount of money I won't sell you. No, $3,400. Alex Kazakis made $3,250. That's pretty good for only 2 days of work when you didn't make the final. So pretty good. Roberto Gomez made $2,000. I won't go through the rest of it, but let's start with this one. What do you guys think about the format? I mean, Chris Melling won the first day and ended up making $10,000 less than Albin, who played 6 days of the 7-day qualifier and ended up winning the event. So of course that adds to it. But he made $10,000 before actually qualifying for the finals event, and Chris Melling made 4,000. So he netted an extra 6,000 by not getting out right away. What do you guys think of that? Maybe I can ask Kelly. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. I think that, of course, in an ideal world, if the winners circle group on the final day could have more prize money in it, rather than it being similar to each day, then that would solve that problem. But of course, that's in a perfect world, and we need more sponsorship for that. But, that would be the solution. Chris, we were laughing about it because we were saying whoever wins day one potentially could be in a worse financial position than somebody that gets through each day. And that sure enough happened. It happened to be Chris, and that sure enough happened to him. But that would be the only way to be a solution for that. And just before I have to go, guys, I was going to say, Nate, one thing I thought of was maybe groups of 5 instead of 7, but like 9 groups of 5 and 9 days. That way, each day wouldn't be as long, and you could still do a similar format. But the problem you have then is the semi-finals and final. There's only one player would go home, and then you'd have a semi-final final. So it could work. 9 groups of 5, for example, or 10 groups of 5, or 12 groups of 5. I don't know. But that would be another solution to the money. It would be great if we could have a bit more sponsorship dollars in that winner's circle payout.
Kelly, before you run, could you have it set up to where instead of a cumulative prize money, if you advanced, then whatever the 4,000 is that you get for advancing, you get capped at that. For example, if Albin won 2,000 on day 1 or 1,000 on day 2, but then once he advances in the end, he gets capped at 4,000. So you only get the greatest of, you don't get all of it. Would that ever make sense or not really?
But then that just benefits the promoters, right? It saves the promoters money.
Okay.
Well, it would in a sense, if we were getting, let's say, for example, if we were getting 400,000, then we could, or 40,000. But the fact that we're talking about, such, $4,000 capping it, I think for all his hard work, 6 days, 11 hours, 12 hours a day, I think they deserve to be paid. I mean, bless Chris Mellon. He qualified on day 1, but he could rest up, and, he didn't have to do any work. So Albin got paid, I think, for his work. And he eventually won it, and what a trooper he really is. But I see what you're saying, but I think if we got a lot more money, then we could, maybe that would be a good idea. But based on the money, I think Albin deserved every penny, to be honest. Yeah. I was shattered, so I think he deserved every penny.
Yeah, you'd have to be pretty confident in your game to be able to, you got. The group that came in, you got essentially seven bullets in the chamber if you're not going to be eliminated along the way. So I mean, if you get down to those last 3 days, I mean, there's no reason that Albin had to win day 6. I mean, there's great players in the field at that point. I mean, Alex Kazakis could have won it. Naoki Oi's already out at the time. I mean, Billy Thorpe was still in the field. Miensko Fortunski.
He nearly actually went. Albin nearly was out.
Yeah.
On day.
He lost his first 3, right?
And it was only because in that final day, he nearly didn't even make the top 4 when he was playing Niels. You saw Niels go and ask the commentators, and Albin sat in his seat. He didn't know even after that match against Niels that whether he qualified into the final 4 or not, which is why it's so exciting, because on table 2, David Arcadi won or lost, and that made, or Oi lost or won. It was a hill match, and that match determined that Albin could get through and not Niels, not the other way around. So that's what's so exciting about it.
Yeah.
So, Anyway, guys, I've got to love you and leave you. Love you seeing you all.
Thanks for joining us, Kelly.
Nice to meet you.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Kelly.
All right, see you soon. All right, take care. Bye,
Yep.
Rob. Bye, everybody. I'm not going through you. See you later.
Bye, Kelly.
Bye.
All right, so Kelly is joining us for just a little while so that she could talk about it. She has to go join another podcast that's happening tonight, so we'll let her jump out. We are still going strong, so don't worry. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess we kind of discussed that one. I think that there's some huge benefits in not getting out immediately. If you have the confidence to, like, if I was Miensko Fortunski, I mean, he's a really, really, really great player. but he's probably not a great enough player that he can win any single day at ease, right? I mean, he's not an Eklanti Kachi who could do that. He's not an Albin quite. I mean, he's not like a Joshua Filler type. I mean, he's got to take any chance that he can get. I think if you're like a Joshua Filler, Fedor Gorst, if you were to play in this, maybe even like a Jason Shaw, I think that they can kind of do what they want. I mean, they're almost a shoe-in for the playoffs or the semifinals, and then they just got to win 2 matches. I feel like it's probably better to not, of course, dump, but you don't feel like you have to get out or you're going to lose your opportunity. What do you guys think about
this?
that?
What about this, Nate? You mentioned that if they were capped at the 4,000, then the tournament promoters just end up pocketing that money because if Albin had earned X dollars on days 1 through 5, and then they just get to keep that. What if it was formatted to where anybody that advanced got the cap, and any prize money that they accumulated up to that point went into a pool that got distributed equally among all the people that advanced. So Chris Melling, who advanced on day 1, and then everybody else that advanced on days 2, 4, 5 that took multiple attempts, they earned all that extra prize money got distributed among all the people that advanced. That way, like Albin's not gonna have any advantage to sitting around trying to accumulate an eighth of additional prize money. And you're better off cinching up the advancement and then knowing that you're going to get a bigger piece of whatever pie ends up coming.
Well, let me answer that with a question back to you first. Do you look at it as a problem that like Albin was able to accumulate, what was it, $6,000 before actually making it?
I do. I don't look at it as a problem in the sense that you're going to see. There's 2 problems, right? One is, well, are players eventually going to start gaming the system? And I don't even want to have the conversation. I think that everyone has their price in pool. And so that's one problem. But the other problem is just the integrity of the prize payouts, which is I would like to see the payouts equate roughly with the performances. And so when you see people that don't perform as well exceeding the earnings of people that have done more impressive feats, Chris Melling coming into a tough field and blitzing it out of the gate, I think it's a little disappointing that it's kind of like watching somebody go to the Derby and take 3rd in the banks and 3rd in the one pocket and break even. It's just something's kind of distasteful about that. That's all.
Yeah. I think the way I'm kind of looking at this, to answer your question, I guess I'm not going to ask you a question directly, but I'm going to kind of put it as this way. Kelly kind of said, at the end of the day, Chris Melling played 10 matches. And if we were going to put our hard hats on and go out and build a bridge, if we worked 10 hours, we're going to get paid less than somebody who worked 55 hours, right? And the way I kind of look at this is Albin played 55 matches of pool. The fact that he made more money in doing so, I have no problem with that personally. In fact,
it makes no sense to me. This is not an hourly job. It's like, that would be like saying if I went and played 20 pro tournaments and lost every single one, never won a match, and then somebody else won and ran through a winter side and won the tournament in 8 matches and they won 40,000 and I've never won a match and I've put in more work. It's like, I don't understand that idea. This is competition, and yeah, I guess I don't get that.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, you have 7 competitors and only one can be the ultimate winner, right? But that doesn't mean that Albin's not winning along the way. It's not a binary thing where you're either a winner as a 1 or you're a loser as a 0 and you have 6 zeros and 1 1. I mean, you can. I mean, we saw Eklanti Kachi go. I want to say 5-1 or maybe even 6-0 in the opening day. I think it was 5-1, and then lost in the semifinals. I mean, you can't say that he's a loser then. I would say that he did a lot of winning, and I think Albin did a lot of winning along the way too. Maybe that's slightly more understandable for you. I'm not sure.
Well, it's an interesting format, and we all get to have our opinions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that, in the end, I think that they've got to have some type of payouts for people and incentives for people to perform through all stages of the tournament. I've got, they can do what they want to do. I get to have my opinion, which is I'd like to see the people. I'd like to see people, and I understand it's not a traditional tournament where it doesn't have to be all the money is in the top 3 spots, and people that have ground hard for days to get through difficult fields shouldn't be recognized and rewarded. I just think that it kind of smacks a little bit like I don't like to see people that perform at a transcendent level with the best win-loss rate on, like winning the, first day, blitzing the field, coming out strong, and then to have that kind of penalized, you could say that Albin was rewarded for his work, or you could look at it like Chris was kind of penalized by not having the opportunity to make additional income. And I think that if they pooled all the additional earnings from Albin and all those other competitors that took multiple attempts and paid it out, where Chris got an eighth of whatever that money was, then I think he's being rewarded for qualifying so quickly. That's all.
Yeah, I don't think that this is any issue at all if the money in the championship or in the winners pool is bigger, right? Because the fact that $6,000 is first, yeah. I kind of look at this as like each individual. So we've all been part of a tour, I'm assuming at some point in time, where you have 8 series of tournaments, and if you get first or second in one of them, you qualify for the final bracket. In which case it has whatever 1,000 added. But once you qualify, you can't play again. I kind of look at this as like kind of one of those tours of tournaments where once you qualify, you can't play in any of the other ones. I don't know. That's at the end of the day. I think we can all agree that this is having pool like this again is pretty awesome. I don't know, Rob or Mike, either one of you guys want to chime in on any of the things Demetrius and I just said?
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, I see where Demetrius is coming from, and I can agree with what he's saying, where it doesn't seem right that your performance is penalized. Trying to do away with there being the option to game the system. We're talking about pool players. We're talking about hustlers. There is always going to be a way to game the system. They've gamed the system for years and years. And honestly, I think the smaller amount of prize money may have made it where they were less likely to. I mean, we talked about it before the event got started about what were the possibilities that someone could do exactly what Albin did. And we were asking, what are the chances of them doing it on purpose? I don't in any way think that Albin did it on purpose. If he did, then he needs to get into acting, because he did a great job.
Yep. And he almost got eliminated. He was very close to being eliminated. He had to beat Ralph Souquet on day 2? If he didn't beat Ralph Souquet on day 2, he was gone.
Oh yeah, and again, I have no thoughts in my mind that any of that took place on purpose. I don't think any of the guys did lost any matches on purpose. I think they were all so happy just to be back out playing in a tournament and collecting real prize money that they just wanted to do their best. It's an interesting concept when you're talking about taking the money and pooling it together, but then it seems like you're starting to go down that road to splits and savers, and that's just such an ugly part of the game. I don't know.
I just want to clarify one thing, Mike. I'm not worried about making a rule change to as a concern of intentional gaming. That's not actually it. It's more of just I have no doubt that Albin was on the square, and whatever things people do or don't do in the future, that's not really my intent. I just think it's a little distasteful to see somebody perform very, very, very well and be at a major disadvantage financially to somebody that didn't perform as well for So that's all. So it's like it's not even was it intentional or not. It's that the fact that this could even happen. But anyway, but I appreciate, it's an interesting puzzle, and I'm glad that the Matchroom, whatever we nitpick, obviously, like Nate said, they gave it a lot of thought and they were very careful with how they put it together. And the event ran off with however the final prize money played out and however we might feel about it. I would say that even, I give them a 5-star, I give them thumbs up, and I think they did an amazing job. So.
This is kind of an interesting thing, Demetrius. I'm looking at Chris Melling's record for the tournament. He was actually, to get into the semifinals, he had a 3-3 record on the first day, and in the winners group, he went 4-2. So he played obviously a total of 12 matches and went 7-5.
Yeah, you know what though? I look at it a little different. That would be like that. I guess that would be like if you played somebody a race to 11 and you beat them 11-10. and then somebody else played a couple of races to 11, and I don't know, won like no, I already confused myself with all this. The point is that I'll just leave it really simple. The point is that an 11-10 win is a win, and two 11-10 losses are still two losses, even if you scored 20 racks. And so I just look, or like if somebody won 11-10 and then lost 11-0, 11-0. I don't know. I'm confusing myself. Like I said, the point is, I look at it like, I don't know how the Chris did it. I don't care if his matches were 5-4. I don't care if he just eked in with the skin. He got it done when he needed to get it done to advance. And to me, it's a win-loss type situation. And that's it.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's a very interesting format. Like we said, I guess talking about the actual event now, Albin Ocean gets first place. I predicted that, although I think most people said Joshua Filler, and that wasn't really that would have been an interesting. I mean,
I think I was pretty on Albin too. If you go back, I don't remember exactly, but I know he was one of my strong picks. I thought that he's been playing extremely well.
And then David Al-Qaidi, which was actually Carl Boyce's pick on this one. So we have Albin and David Al-Qaidi in the finals. Albin winning 5-1 and getting every single role in the book possible in that final. He played great too. Don't get me wrong, but I mean he got some pretty jelly rolls in that. Chris Melling and Eklanti Kachi both tied, I believe, for third because they both got 2 wins in their loss against Albin and David, respectively. And then we have Nayuki Oi getting 5th place, just barely not making it over Albin Ocean because he had 4 more losses than Albin, but they had the same amount of win.
He was my pick to get out of the group. I'm a believer in Naoki Oi. That guy, he's gonna pineapple pen his way to the money.
Mark Biesterbosch, I think that's a huge surprise for everybody. I think we all had in fact, I'm not even sure. I think Demetrius and Rob, you guys hadn't even heard of him, right? Going into this?
Yeah. I bet everything I own that he would not qualify, and so I'm now in big trouble.
But I've heard of him because of you, Nate. You talked about him a lot.
Yeah, I know.
Over the years on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I watched him play for the first time with Niels Fine in the World Cup of Pool. I want to say probably 3 years ago now, and I was impressed with his game. But I mean, he's not quite at the level. I mean, he had a great tournament. I mean, he really did. But this is an overachievement for him, which is good. You got to build these profiles, and then Niels Fine gets last in the winners group. I would say the event, all in all, my final thoughts on this that I have, it was an amazing event. I mean, it made me incredibly unproductive for 8 days, so I wasn't a huge fan of that. I really, really am glad that they put the shot clock in effect on day 2 or after day 2 because I think the first day it finished nearly 2 a.m. local time, and they're back up, at midnight, or they're back up at noon to start their matches. So, I mean, that's already, that's pretty tight window for them. And of course, you gotta wake up, you gotta eat, you gotta get ready, blah, 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 blah. The days were running too long. You just can't run a 14-hour event 8 days in a row. Then it just becomes a complete fitness routine, and that's just too tough. So I'm glad that they put the shot clock in effect. That trimmed off about 3 to 4 hours every day, which was pretty good, I think. It made the days about 10 to 11 hours, which it's fine, I would say. Anybody have any closing thoughts? I guess that's really just mine. I'm glad that they're kind of working. They're willing to work through the bugs of adding the shot clock, and I mean that in the middle of an event to do something like that, it means that they're trying to really perfect it, and they're willing to grow and they're willing to learn. So I really like that addition. Rob,
I have a comment, and this goes to a little bit about what Demi was talking about, I think, and it's inherent in the game of pocket pool. Say, I'll give you an example of playing 8-ball race to 7, any kind of table, and you play, shoot difficult racks, 7 difficult racks, and you run 7 balls, every one of those racks, and something happens. And your opponent gets up there, shoots 1 ball in. It's the 8-ball. He wins that match 7-0. there's no way in that tournament, nowhere in that tournament, that anybody's going to say, good job. You just lost 7-0. Your opponent made 7 balls. You made 49.
There was actually a stat in one of
and
the matches.
That just blows my mind.
There was a stat in one of the matches. I'm blanking on who it was. I was watching a replay of Fedor Gorst, or no, Chang Jung Lin and Chang Jung Lin and Sky Woodward at the International Open last year. And at one point in time, Chang Jung Lin had made like 92 balls, and Sky Woodward hadn't made a single ball yet, and he was down whatever it was to 0. It was like 8-0 or something like that. It was some stupid amount of, like, they were 7 or 8 racks into the game, and Sky Woodward had still not made a single ball yet. And he had 5-6 innings at the table, but he's bad shots. But anyways, let's move on. Demetrius, what do you think?
Yeah, that's just it, man. Pools in the short term, I would just keep it really simple and say in the short term, pool is not fair, and that there's a lot of variance, and that hard work, preparation, practice, skill, none of those things are going to be rewarded fairly in the short term, but they are all rewarded exactly fairly in the long term. And so that's it. You just kind of keep going and let the chips fall where they fall, and everybody gets I like to believe. I know some people get hung up on situations where they got bad rolls, or they had to run through a lot of difficult racks, and then their opponent got easier ones or whatever. But in the end, I just look at it and say, what if
What did you
your
guys
pool
think about?
career and the output that you got was exactly what you deserve? I just hang on, Rob. I'm just saying, what if what we got was exactly what we deserved? What about that? What if that was the case? Then why don't we just go back and put in more input? If we want more output, let's just go back and put in more input. Go ahead.
That's a good point. What do you guys think about the straight money aspect in this day and age of the pool players? We've talked about this for 30, 40 years, that there's a lot of sports out there that get paid a whole bunch of money to play. And then there's pool. What did the winner of this last match play of $16,000, you said?
Yeah, which is
something like that. There was a local
bad.
tournament up here in northern Wisconsin last weekend. Was a $25 entry fee, and the winner walked away with $4,000. And I'm thinking there's something going on here that needs to be addressed in the pool world.
Well, I think this is the bigger can of worms than we could probably open up today.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think that's
I'm
a future
bringing it
topic.
up,
That's such a yeah. That's not a quick answer, but I think we all have some opinions on that. So
yeah, I think we could talk about this maybe next week or the week after that when we have a little less on the docket, because we have 2 more matches.
Well, how about 10 minutes for the next 5 weeks?
Get out of here,
let's
Rob.
zero down, but then you're going to put up the $2,000 out. I feel like some negotiation here.
All right, shut up, everyone. What do you think, Mike?
2 things come to mind. I was completely wrong before the event got started on Naoki Oi. I remember asking the question, did he truly belong in that field? And he showed that he truly belongs in that field. So he definitely surprised me there. The other, it's so sad. Go on YouTube and look up Daryl Peach, Roberto Gomez.
I wanted to talk to you guys about this one off air. This is.
I mean, look at the shot. Look at the shot that ended it in the World 9-Ball Championship, and tell me that was not a mirror image of the shot in CLP.
Really?
The World 9-Ball Championship was a little bit easier, but it was the same cut down the rail from midway, middle of the table. And I think he may have missed it the same way, overcut the ball, and he was done after that.
Roberto Gomez was. Yeah, I mean, he ended up losing, did he lose 5 of 6 or all 6 of us the next day?
I think he lost 5 of 6 the next day. And I'm willing to bet he thinks about that shot for months. Goes back to what Rob was talking about. A short memory.
He was up 4-3 at the time, and then he was playing against David Al-Qaidi, and then David Al-Qaidi broke and ran out on him. Is that right?
And he ran to that point. It wasn't like he got up to the table and thought, oh, crap, this is what he left me. He ran 4 or 5 balls to get there.
Yeah, he lost 5 of 6. Oh, he lost to Naoki Oi. Yeah, he made a good run out to get to that point. And then just gets down and fires the ball right into the rail. I mean, is this the career of Roberto Gomez? And well, we don't need to open up that bag of worms either.
I'm not gonna. I want to comment on this, not on Roberto, but on that situation. So I have a Facebook group for the guys that have come and trained with me, and a lot of times they're very excited to report some of their wins that they have afterwards, some of their breakthroughs that they've had, some of their accomplishments, whatever. And so I started a thread a week ago, and I said, I want to talk about the biggest meltdowns of 2021. And I said, all this stuff, I said, wins and losses, I always say the road to success, the road to success is paved with failure. And that, I talked about my VG10, how I completely kind of shot straight up in the air against Mika and was totally ineffective and just didn't even score a rack and just got completely run over. That was like my worst day in pool for 2021. And I'm like, rather than sit there and talk about, constantly focusing on what wins we've had, I'm like, why don't we celebrate some of our big meltdowns and losses? Because here's the thing. If you don't have them, if the answer is, I don't have any big meltdowns and losses yet in 2021, and I'm challenging everyone listening, if you don't have a big meltdown where you've done something like Roberto Gomez, then you're not on the right path. And you don't measure the path by wins. Wins don't stop anybody. And so I look at it, sometimes people, when they miss a ball or they melt down, they feel like, well, this just means I'm not a real competitor. I'm like, no, you are a real competitor, because only real competitors put themselves in situations where they're under so much heat that their knees can buckle and they can wilt. And so for people that aren't in that spot and haven't been in that spot yet this year, like that to me is more embarrassing than missing on a clutch shot. Is, why aren't we in competition? Why aren't we exposing ourselves? If you're a competitor, you got to get exposed. And so that's how I feel.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Exposure, failure. How do we learn? We fail.
Yep. All right.
So that's good.
Yep. That wraps up our discussion on the CLP. Let's move over. And I actually, to be honest, I mean, we can talk about this. I didn't watch a single second of this one with the CLP going on. And then later on with Justin Bergman and Fedor, I just thought it was infinitely more interesting, the Justin Bergman and Fedor. But Tony, Chohan, and Chip played their one pocket, and Chip was getting 8-7 or 9-8. I think it was 8-7. And Chip beat him up. Chip won 25-19. Is it time to stop doubting Chip on any matchup that he ever plays ever and just crown him as number one?
He's sneaky good, man. I mean, we saw it. I think when we watched him play Roberto Gomez, it was easy to look at Roberto making mistakes and playing erratically, but that wasn't a case of Roberto playing bad. So was it a case of Roberto playing badly, or was that a case of that's what he looks like when he plays Chip? And I think it was a real testament to Chip's good play. I didn't see the match he played Chohan. I thought it was 9-8, but I've seen enough of Chip playing to know that he just doesn't have that many leaks, and he knows all the shots. He executes well enough. He's not at the absolute highest level, but he executes well enough to execute what he needs to do in one pocket to play very, very high level. And I think it's going to take a Filler, a Fedor, or a Dennis or an Alex. I think it's going to take somebody that has a substantial striking edge to beat him. I think Tony has. I don't think that Tony has the striking edge. I think that Tony's a great one-pocket player. He's one of the best in the world. But I think that the only way you're going to beat Chip is to put somebody in that actually shoots and strikes the balls at an elite level with a huge one-pocket game to back it up.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Mike, you got anything?
They'll throw me out of the state for this, but I think watching one pocket is like watching paint dry. So... No.
So we'll skip over you.
Yes.
I mean, the only thing that I would say about the match, there's 2 games of pool that I think that you can actually like sit down and Bill Belichick your game plan. And like if Demetrius and I are going to play a big set of 10 ball and we're going to have $150,000 in the middle and we're going to be playing, break from the box, 10 on the
50,
spot,
50?
whatever it is.
chop that 50-50?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Make a deal immediately. No, I'm just kidding.
The point is I can't go into that match and say, all right, I'm going to push out after every single break, or I'm going to have this game plan, or I'm going to have this game plan. It just doesn't work. It's too fast paced of a game. You can't have a physical game plan. You just go in and play your game, right? You're not going to say, all right, well, I'm gonna go into this game trying to take more jump shots because I think that's going to put me in a better position to win, or I'm going to play safety more because it's going to put me in a better position to win. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have an out, you got to take it. At the level that Demetrius plays at, and I play just 17 levels behind, you can't go into that really and say, all right, I'm gonna try to build a strategy. But you can do that with one pocket, and we saw Chip Compton build a strategy around playing Roberto Gomez, which was basically, I'm not going to do a damn thing until he does something stupid. And he rode that to just a beatdown of Roberto Gomez. And we're seeing this again here. I think Chip is like a lot smarter when it comes to these events these matchups than anybody is giving him credit for. He is going into these things with a game plan, and he's executing it, and he's winning. I mean, who can beat him in the U.S. right now with one pocket? If they're going to go back and they're going to play the rematch at Tony's house, so we'll see what happens there. But if Chip wins again, who else in the world can beat him at this point? Alex, Dennis, Boosty, maybe. I think it's real.
I think from what I saw with Chip, what's interesting is, from what you just said, for people that haven't watched it, they could easily misinterpret what you're saying, that he played some kind of suffocate style or some kind of knit tight style. And the problem is that doesn't work against, and that's not what he did, but that style, and that's not what you said. I'm just saying for people that heard that style doesn't work against guys like Roberto or Chohan or any great player, because when you're not playing aggressively, you're not putting enough pressure on your opponents. When you don't have balls in front of your pocket, threatening them to where if they don't protect the cue ball or if they sell out, you can really hurt them with a big run, or you're threatening to win the game or run balls. If you're not threatening them, then you free them to play however aggressively they want to play. And so what Chip does is he plays, I guess in poker, they say that you've got players that are knit tight, right? They don't take any chances. You've got players that are like loose cannons, where they're just throwing around their stacks. But then you've got, in the old days, they called it tight aggressive style, where you're selectively aggressive. And I feel that when I'm watching Chip, he plays selectively aggressive. So he plays kind of a little bit on the conservative side, where he just doesn't want his opponents to get up, and where he's not missing shots and shooting for stuff he doesn't know he can make and selling out again and again. He's not swinging control of the game over to his opponents once a rack, but he's still playing aggressively within a skill set of what he knows he can execute at a high percentage and calculated risks. And he's able to play well enough to where he could play 80 or 90% of it as aggressively as a Tony Chohan and not take those extra risks that some of the players take on the end where he's selling out from time to time. And he's really got it balanced extremely well. And I've watched him play very closely because I've been blown away by his effectiveness. And I'm a big believer that he is extremely in tune with how to balance his aggression and his risk and how to game manage. And so I just wanted to kind of communicate, he's not playing net tight. He's not playing conservative. He's not driving all the balls up table and just suffocating them and grinding them down. He's playing very selectively aggressive, and it's very impressive.
Yep.
I got a comment to Mike's comment about one pocket. A little follow up on that. The match between Federer and James, when they started their one pocket match, there was a point early on, and you have to admit the most important shot after the break is the next shot after your opponent breaks in one pocket. I mean, it can win or lose you the game. And there was a point where James had broke and Federer got up to play. And he didn't know what to shoot. He just kept looking and looking, trying to find a good shot, and really couldn't find it. There was one obvious one, and it was the one he ended up shooting in the end, but he got down on that table, I'm going to say no less than 15 times, and started stroking, got back up and chalked up again and relooked at everything over again. And in the end, he shot that very first shot that he got down on the table to shoot.
But it took
And to
15
me,
times.
that my brain blew up after that. I said, I don't want to watch this to myself. That's what I said. I forced myself to, but I didn't want to because I thought, this is what I'm going to see? This kind of action? This isn't even action to me. And I did see more of that in the game, and that was early on when he was really searching how to play, searching what the right shots were.
Yeah.
He learned what the right shots were after that as the game went on. But I know what you're saying, Mike, and I to some degree, I'm definitely on board with you.
There's certainly more exciting and less exciting one pocket.
But
While
if
I
you-
say that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you go online, I think you could find it on YouTube. I believe Joey Ryan streamed it. We had a match out here 3 weeks ago. Chris Adams, Avery Reese, a couple local players. Between their backers and themselves, they were playing for 10,000 each. I watched more of that match, partly because I knew the two guys that were in it, but also partly because George Teachea and Scott Frost were doing the commentary. And, you know, anybody out here in Arizona has had more than their share of time watching Scott play one pocket, but listening to him commentate it was very informative. And listening to George commentate anything is informative. So, you know, that I did spend a fair amount of time watching. And if you dig one pocket, then I would go out and look for that match. Chris Adams, Avery Reese.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's scoot on and we'll talk about the last thing. Justin Mason, I see your question. I'm going to push it to the end of this because I think it's an interesting conversation that we can have after this. Justin Bergman and Fedor Gorst. The final score was 100-69, and I don't know if it was that close. I know that I think Fedor was actually at 98-60, maybe 61, and he kind of took his foot off the gas pedal. Figuratively speaking, of course. I mean, he started struggling a little bit, and it looked like it was just like can't quite get over the finish line, but I have no pressure to get over the finish line. So it kind of just maybe some lazy positionings, lazy shot selection, stuff like that. It didn't have to be as close as it was, but this is the second big race to 100 that Fedor Gorst has had in the last, I guess, month and a half. I think was when he played Jeffrey DeLuna. And he has beaten the piss out of both of them. And we're not talking about, like, you know, shortstop pool players. I mean, Justin Bergman and Jeffrey DeLuna, they're both 800 level Fargo pool players. I mean, these guys aren't the elite in the world, but they're the next thing to it, pretty much, I would say. And Fedor's beating him like it's child's play. I think I would like to start the discussion here because I just don't think there's a lot to talk about in the match. I mean, Fedor breaks the ball so damn good and runs out from everywhere. I mean, Justin Bergman just doesn't have the breaking to stick with him, and then we can talk about his break and we can talk about what led to the win. But I mean, it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over again with Justin Bergman. It just seems like his break is always going to let him down. It doesn't seem like he's working on it. Maybe he is. I don't know. But I know that every time he plays one of these matches and he loses, we're pointing right back to his break and that being the difference because he's got a tighter cue ball than probably just about anybody in the world, and his shot making ability, his shot selection. I mean, it's all good. The only thing that's not is his breaking. So I don't think we even need to have that discussion. Maybe if you guys want to, we can. But
I actually kind of a little bit disagree. I mean, if let me put it this way. Suppose you had a neutral breaker that went out, didn't know who they were breaking for, broke the whole match. Would you want to bet Bergman? I mean, I don't. So here's the thing. I think Fedor is kind of like when I was talking about Naoki Oi. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And if you sit there and break it down and say, okay, who shoots straighter, who positions the cue ball better, who jumps better, who moves better, who breaks better, whatever. Like you could sit there and say, well, that's the biggest gap is the break, and without that, he plays as good after the break. I don't know. I look at it and say there is. We're talking about the very, very, very top players in the world. I mean, Fedor is in contention to be considered the top player in the world. If he's not, he's in contention. And there's a gap. There's a gap, not necessarily just in the break or just in the jump or just in the striking, but there's a gap in how he's able to put those pieces together and what level of a play he's able to achieve, maintain, what his high range looks like, what his low range looks like, and how he's able to battle through those ranges. And when I look at it, I'm like, I actually find it. I feel like there's kind of two things to take away from this match, and one of them is what I want to talk about first is people that think that you can do anything you put your mind to. That's a great mindset. Positive thinking, confidence, positive attitude is great. But for Justin Bergman to get in the ring and put up money or his backers' money and sit there and be like, I can do this, it's like, actually, no. Nope, you can't. And I love Justin. I'm a huge fan of the U.S. I'm a huge fan of Justin Bergman. I admire his heart for getting in the ring with the best player in the world. But at some point, reality is reality. And you can't just go play Fedor Gorst and just beat him because you're Dumble with a magic feather. And the guy, and it's not just because of his break. The guy has put together an almost unbeatable game, and that's not a shot at Justin. It's just that's how Federer's playing.
Well, let me ask you this, Demetrius. Based off of that, because I do agree with you. I don't think that Justin shoots the balls as straight as Fedor at this point either. But let's say, let's go back to your suggestion. Let's say Shane Van Boening 10 years ago was breaking the balls for Justin Bergman. Do you obviously you said you still take Fedor, but what do you think the score would be?
Maybe 100-80.
So
maybe 100-75. I don't know that it's as decisive as
6 games. Interesting.
Because they're playing cut. If they were playing a different game, they're playing cut, break, 9-ball. I mean, it's a weird one because the whole point of playing cut, break, 9-ball was the idea that it was break for the box. It was supposed to be trying to find a way to equalize, not even equalize, but to minimize the gap between their breaking edges. And yet, I looked at the stats. Fedor broke the balls and he broke 99 times or something, and he ran out 42. Or 40, it was like 42%. It was 41 out of 98 or something like that. It was like he broke and ran out 41%, despite that cut break. And so I don't know. I guess
what was
to answer your
what was
question,
Justin's?
He was 20%. He broke the ball 70 times and he ran out 14 or something. I mean, I'm going off memory, but it was 20. I know it was 20%. Yeah.
So then just curious. Well, let me rephrase my question.
So if he had doubled that, to 40%. And assuming that he played as well after the break as he did on every single successful. So if he doubled his break and runs, it would have been 14 points or 14, score closer, which would have been 83. But then again, if he'd been at 83, would Fedor have fallen asleep at the finish line? I mean, who knows? I think
go
ahead and make your point. Yeah.
Well, I think the really important thing here is it's not that he's making a ball and he's running out. I think he's making a ball and having control of the pool table. Right, because I mean, if just from what I saw, which was the last 2 days, I mean, Justin Bergman, he just wasn't even making balls. But when he was, I mean, he's got no look at the 2 ball, and that's assuming he makes the 1 ball into the side pocket like he's trying to do. He just has very, very, very few opportunities to control the table from the beginning of the table. When he does see his ball, he's either got a really tough pot or he's got like a really tough safety. I think if you have Shane or even just Fedor breaking the balls for him, I mean, he's at least put in control of the table that he can make things happen. Now, does that mean that Fedor's not going to jump out on him and run out like he did seemingly every single time Justin hooked him without a freezing of the ball? Who knows? But I think just the control of the pool table is the most important part that I'm making.
And I think you're right. And I think that does influence mindset. It does influence momentum. For sure, Fedor has to feel great when he knows that he's going to be getting more opportunities. It's got to put a ton of heat on Justin when he knows that he can't really hit him with a big package when he wants to and that he's up against it. And he's behind on the score. So all those things definitely play a role. So the mental energy does get – it doesn't take a huge change in the break to close that gap on the positive or negative energy that they're dealing with, the pressures they're dealing with. But in the end, I just feel like when Fedor has put his game together in a way to where he can win world championships, win major events, take on the best players in the world, beat them by convincing margins, to not give him the credit for that he's doing something beyond just shooting balls in a pocket. Like, I think it's a profound lack of understanding that people can look at Fedor and think that, well, the guy is just shooting balls and his statistics on black and white. If we gave him a couple more chances, he'd do the same thing. I think it's tremendously minimizing and diminishing of what Fedor is actually doing on the pool table. I think there's a lot more to it than just shooting balls in. Fedor's got, and I told you, he's in his 2 years. He's in a very, very positive state of mind. And it's his mindset as much as anything in the world that's making him unbeatable. I don't think people are recognizing that.
No, Well, yeah, I agree with what you said. I certainly am not trying to diminish Fedor, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit. But let's get Mike and Rob in here. Do you guys have any thoughts?
Well, he plays like he's on a practice field.
He does.
That's how he
He
looks
actually
like.
does. Yeah.
Like he doesn't feel any heat at all, and he's just playing. It's fun to watch.
I was chatting a little bit. Sorry, Rob.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was chatting a little bit with Erwin yesterday when the final score came out, and we were joking. Can you name two guys on the planet that you would put above Fedor right now? I can name one, and I'm not even sure that he's above him.
This is the discussion that I was going to get to right after this one. So let's just jump into it right now. Why don't you start with it? Okay. Start with it.
Who's your name, Mike?
Well, Filler. I mean, I want to see Filler and Gorst. I want to see him play a long race, and I want to see him play for a fair amount of money. And Bergman is easily one of the top 5 in the States. Top 5 rotation players in the States. But it just shows the difference in their games so much. I mean, who's going to compete with Fedor right now? And don't get me wrong, in 2 years, it'll be somebody completely different. But right now, like Demetrius says, right now, he's in that zone. He's young, he's fearless, and it's going to take somebody young and fearless to beat him.
Well, if you guys don't mind, I was texting with Shane Van Boning before this event started, and I was basically just we were talking about he's got back to practicing, and he was saying, man, my break is just garbage. And we started talking a little bit about his game, and then we started talking about this matchup and what it means, because we were both, Demetrius and I were gambling on Fedor. We both obviously love that side, and I thought it was a pretty obvious win. Yeah, right. I thought Fedor was going to win pretty comfortably. Maybe not quite this comfortably, but not far off. I would have guessed I would have guessed 75, something like that. Comfortable win. So then Shane and I were talking about this, and Shane was like, I got no chance. And Shane Van Boning straight up said to me, I have no chance against Fedor. And I could see this because I could see some people saying, like Shane Van Boning in the comments, Shane doesn't think he has a chance. And that's interesting because, I had mentioned that the two obvious names are Chang Jung Lin and Joshua Filler. And I won't give Shane's opinion on that one, but the point is Shane thinks that there's only one person in the world that can beat him, and it lines up with I guess what I think is I think the only person that can compete with Fedor at this point is probably Chang. To go back to answer your question originally, I think Chang is the only person in the world that I don't think Joshua Filler can. I just don't. Not with the way that Fedor breaks the balls. If we're playing maybe 9-ball. I could see Dennis being able to compete with him playing 9-ball. Josh being able to compete in 9-ball. But if it's 10-ball, rack your own template. Chang is the only player I see in the world that might be able to beat Fedor.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think that I'm a huge Chang fan because I think that Chang plays patterns and game manages rotation as well as anybody I've ever seen. Going back to Ralph Souquet, Nick Varner, some people that I really admire the fact that you can watch Chang play for hours and just not see him do anything unnatural, heroic. The guy is just very, very, very beautifully, assembled. Anyways, the guy plays great percentage pool, and the guy is probably probably one of my top 3 favorite players of all time. But I'd have to go Fedor just on youth, momentum, and positive energy. I just don't know how you'd bet against. Like, Chang can beat him, but I don't know how you'd bet against Fedor. That's what I don't understand is why would you bet it? It's like watching a guy, he's doing it again and again and again.
It's like Shane Van Boning in his prime, right?
Right, that's
Shane
the
in
same.
his prime.
The same
Why
thing.
would you bet against him?
Same thing. I just don't understand it. Like, I'm not saying he couldn't be beat. I'm just saying I think that when people bet against a guy like Fedor, it's like I don't know if they get irritable, like, well, he can't be. No. What if you would put in this guy, or what if we did that? Like people want to see him stopped, and it's like I can understand. Like I don't mind whatever you want to root for is fine, but when you start betting on matches, it's like I just don't understand who would want to put money in against Federer. Like, I will put it this way: whoever Federer plays next, I will bet Federer, and if I lose, I'll pay it off. That's it. And I'm not saying he can't lose. I'm just saying I don't know why we would want to bet against Federer.
Rob, what do you think? Anything?
Yeah, I can't argue with him being the best player in the world right now, probably, and Joshua being very close second, and Chang, of course, and you know what? Even though that's what Shane said, I think because he's just been ice fishing for 3 months and not playing much pool, I think you get him back in a month from now, and he puts his mind to it. I give him more credit than he gives himself.
Well, look at what happened when he played Dennis, though. He'd gotten back into pool and he was practicing sparring and stuff, and he played Dennis and he had him and slipped away. And listen, I'm not saying Shane's done or that nobody was a bigger Shane fan for 15 years than me. I'm just saying he's at a different stage, and we're not talking about, like, I keep kind of coming back to the same ideas. It's not just the physical parts of his game. It's like, he's just at a different stage in his career. And I'm not saying he's a head case. He's not Earl. Like, I'm no offense, Earl fans, but like, he's not Earl. Like, Shane's a great champion. And we're going to see, I hope to see other major titles and other big things from Shane. We're talking about a guy that's like 19 years old and has been, dreaming about exactly where he's at every day for 10 years on a pool table. And now he's there. And anybody that wants it is going to have to fight through, heaven and earth to get it. And you better have somebody that's hungrier than that. So
yeah, I guess the way I would look at it is that Shane Van Boening Shane wakes up in the morning and convinces himself to practice. Fedor wakes up on a pool table. At this point in his career, I mean, if he's not sleeping on it, he's sleeping under it. I mean,
Probably.
I mean, Shane has to convince himself to get to the level that Fedor wakes up in. And that's, like Demetrius said, he's just at a different point in his career. That doesn't mean he can't play. The dude is, I mean, you can't make a top 5 list without Shane Van Boening being on it. And I'm not talking about right now. I'm talking about for the next however long he wants to play this game. I mean, the guy has a work ethic and a desire for the game that's rare. I mean, extremely, extremely rare. If he wants to be there, he will be there.
Well, and I think when Shane said that he couldn't beat Federer, I actually don't take that as a knock on Shane. I actually look at that as Shane understands exactly where Federer is because he was there for 5 or 10 years. Probably 10 years he was there. And so now he looks at Federer and he's like, yeah, I know that feeling, and I don't have that right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to play that. And
Shane,
so it's actually Shane understands because Shane is just Federer 10 years older. You know what I mean? Or 15 years older. So it's like,
Shane was there for 20 years.
I have a question about jump shots. Pardon me. Do we get to the point? The one thing I haven't seen, Federer jumps the ball so well. I mean, it's like Neight Mindham good. And so my question is, do we ever see jump shots evolve to the point where people play shape for routine jump shots as opposed to risk moving their cue ball around and try to get short side or try to get a more difficult straight hit? Like, I've seen Federer do so much with the jump cue that's left my jaw on the floor. I just wonder, does this game ever get to the point where he would like take ball in hand and give himself a jump shot because he has the right angle to get on the next ball, as opposed to where you'd have to put it on the table and you're on the wrong side of the ball and it's not as natural? Like, do we ever see him accept jump shots the way we accept other shots and just consider it like—
Can you jump in one pocket? Is that legal?
No, I don't think so.
You cannot jump
I've
in
never
one
seen
pocket.
it, but I've jumped in one pocket before.
Yeah, I've
Well,
never seen it.
We're talking
but
about real one pocket.
Because I've never seen it.
Well, that's good because that I don't know. But to answer your question, Demetrius, there are intricacies to. In fact, I'll even do like graphic displays here because I have.
Ooh.
How can you not know that, Nate?
You can't jump in one pocket. No.
Hey, Nate, we need a telestrator.
I don't even know what that means.
I thought you were a promoter.
All right, so we'll take a couple.
Fact check this, somebody, will you?
We'll take a couple balls here, and so the idea of a jump shot. So we'll use this. Is obviously isn't to scale, but the idea is your jump shot. if you're shooting a long jump shot, you're landing, here, and it's kind of bouncing a couple times, and it's eventually getting to a rolling state. But the most,
Balls.
huh? These are the blacks.
Oh,
The point is when you're jumping, most of the time when you're jumping, if you're a top jumper, you're actually landing on balls. You're not jumping to right here and going into it, right? Because the contact here, how high it's going to bounce, you have very, very, very little control off of it. So if you land right here, your cue ball might be up here, and if you're cutting a ball into the corner, the contact point here, for example, if you're going to go into a ball straight like this, it goes straight, right? This is great for all the people that are watching on the or listening on the podcast. But if you land on the same spot, it goes to a completely different spot. It comes to here and here, right? So your contact point actually landing on the ball is extremely important when it comes to jumping the balls. So if you watch the top jumpers, they don't land before the ball; they land on the ball, unless they think that they can get their cue ball actually rolling all the way into the ball, not in the air at all. So if you watch Fedor when he's jumping, he's actually landing on the balls 9 times out of 10. The point is, you can then get your contact points to where you're like right here very consistently. And that's what we worked on, Demetrius, when I was there, is you're actually basically planning to land right here. But the difference between landing right here and right here is a big difference. Of course, you just saw that right there. But what's going to happen out of the reaction of your cue ball is what I'm talking about now, is the amount of English that you'll have if you land her higher up in the ball. If you have backspin on the ball, you're going to be losing more backspin when it's in the air coming down before it hits it. It's very hard to control your cue ball off of them, is my point. So unless you're really perfect when it comes to landing on your balls, it's going to be nearly impossible to actually control your cue ball in a precise way that even like going 3 or 4 rails wouldn't be able to do. I mean, you just wouldn't be able to control it in that kind of way, I don't think. With that being said, I mean, I didn't think that what Fedor does with the jump cue is possible either. So maybe at some point in time they'll get to the point where that level of precision, as far as playing positioning off of it, is possible.
Well, it's an interesting one because I remember having a conversation or posing the question, like if we could fast forward, we think about some of the ways that the game has evolved. And of course, part of that is equipment, jump cues themselves, different tables, different cloth, whatever. But there's also been some growth in the game. I mean, what Shane has done with the break and 10 ball, for example, I mean, when players played 10 ball in the 90s, that's not what it looked like. So there's been evolution in the game. And so I was always wondering if we could go forward 25 years, short of equipment changes and rule changes, what evolution, what growth is left in pool? What could we still see that, maybe players taking on different things that they would never have taken on before? Like, what are we going to see in 20 years that we don't see today? And watching Federer jump, it's made me wonder if we're going to see players accepting jump shots, playing shape for jump shots, if they can guarantee that they can get the right angle and get the right shape. Like, it was an interesting idea, and I wanted to share it since,
What are the rules on equipment in pool? Your pool cue, the interior makeup of your pool cue.
There isn't
What
one.
are there?
You're asking the wrong guy. I just shoot balls in.
There's no source that says this is what it has to be. What's that?
Well, I think there's like isn't there like a 42-inch rule or something that has to fit across the rails and a thing?
Okay, but I mean on the interior of your cue.
There isn't.
What your cue is made out of.
There
isn't.
I'm not sure there is a rule.
So what? So the next generation is going to be in equipment.
It's going to be an engineering.
It's going to have to do with the pool cue.
Well, it starts with the carbon fiber head. Yeah.
Now you got the phenolics that came on the market. Then you got the different weighted cues. And then you got a jump cue actually goes over balls real easy. The next thing is going to be a braking cue that's loaded. Actually, a pneumatic spring-loaded braking cue where you don't have to shoot it real hard. I mean, why not? You wouldn't even have to tell anybody you got anything in it like that.
That's like
Until they notice it. That might be 3 years.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I guess to round out your question, Demetrius, is the level of precision that it takes to land precisely on the edge of a ball to be able to play that positioning, while it's obviously not impossible to do, I don't see how that's ever going to be more precise than controlling a speed shot going 3 rails. maybe it is, and maybe there's a there's situations now where I will play position to a jump shot, if especially playing rotation. If I have a ball on the rail, kind of being covered up a little bit by some balls, and there's no good windows, what I will do is I will play to the biggest window and just jump half of a ball or a third of a ball or whatever it is and shoot a jump shot, and I'm perfectly comfortable doing that. And I mean, it's not uncommon for me to do that. It doesn't happen often, but I like
I
my
see it all the time on push-ups.
yeah, it happens all the time in push-outs now. I mean, that's an interesting thought, right? Because that's, nobody pushed out to a jump shot 15 years ago, right?
No.
But now, I mean, that's and now we're to the point now where if Demetrius, you're going to be playing Fedor in the 9-ball at Derby City this year. He pushes out to a jump shot. You have to take it no matter what, even if you can't make it.
There's no jump cues at Derby.
All right, fine.
Giving it back.
The U.S. Open. The U.S. Open, right? You have to take a jump shot on just because you can't let Fedor swing at it. He'll make it.
It's a pretty bad spot. I'm curious, Mike, what you were about to say. I'm curious what Mike was going to say.
Well, the thought that comes to mind is you're asking how the game is going to change in the next 25 years. Let's look back 25 years, and Efren changed the game. 25 years ago, people were stuck in a kick shot and they were just hitting the balls hard. And Efren introduced kicking safe and that sort of thing. And it really, it changed the game. In golf, they refer to it as Tiger rules. And I see jump cues changing the game. People complain, well, I left him half ball hooked. I couldn't believe he'd get out. Well, how much space did you leave? How much space was there before that ball that Adam blocked? Because if you left him a jump shot, you can't complain that they jumped out of it. Players are going to learn how to play a better safety now.
Yeah,
players are going to learn. Put them up on the ball.
Nate, before you respond, I'm not going to go into this now because I actually want to talk about this more at length and some other point. I think that Efren was given undue credit for evolving the kicking game. I think that if you look at what evolved the kicking game, Efren played a huge role, but that actually the reason why the U.S. players were underdeveloped in that area and that Efren was able to transform it is because they'd been playing 2-foul push out, and that Texas Express was a new invention created to speed up things for TV and make it more exciting. They'd only been playing 1-ball foul for just less than 5 years or just a couple of years when Efren came over. And so had he come over in 2000, I think that the game would have evolved with or without Efren. Now, I think he was the pioneer to show the U.S. players how to kick. But actually, when we talk about how the game evolves, I would actually say that the kicking evolved due to a rule change, not due to the influence of one player. And I think that without that rule change, it wouldn't have seen anyway. So when I'm talking about what's going to happen in 25 years, most of the big evolutions in pool have actually happened due to either equipment or rules, not individuals. And Fedor. So anyway, that's all I was going to say. But go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, going back to that evolution of the kick shot. I mean, what did that do? Well, you learn how to kick safe, and that's great. And then, so what do we need to do? We need to start taking away the short rail. Right? I mean, the game evolved right then and there to no longer give the short rail. So now if you're going to kick safe, you got to do it off a long rail, or you got to do it off, a long ways away. You're creating distance. You're making the kicks harder. And then, eventually they got a little bit better at that still. And now you're taking away, the goal of a safety now is to try to take away all of the one rails. So now you have to go 2 rails to try to kick safe, or 3 rails to try to kick safe. And I think what we're seeing with jump shots is, we're kind of going through it right now is with the professional pool players is when they, how often now do you see when a European, especially the European players, when they play safe, you're frozen on a ball or you're within 2 inches. And that wouldn't have been a thing, I don't think, back in the 80s and 90s. A little bit, to a lesser degree, it would have been in the 2000s, because if you're frozen or very, very close to a ball, you're taking away a significant chunk of the rail to kick off of. But the idea is you can't play a safety anymore, really, and feel good about it unless you're dang near froze to a ball with no one rail kick shot or kick outs.
Well, one thing that I think is really interesting about this, I have not been a big fan of jump shots, jump cues, I should say. But one thing that I would say that I like about the way it's going, when you say that in general the safety play is tighter, is it actually tighter, or is it that now playing a safety where you leave an easy jump shot is no longer as advantageous? So people are willing to take that risk reward. Do I take on a shot or do I play safe? Before jump cues, maybe people would be passing on easier chances because they know that their opponent's going to be kicking and they have very little control over what's going to happen. So maybe they have an 80-20 edge as the safety player. And now with jump cues, they feel like maybe they're only 50-50 if they play that safe, or 60-40, and that they're better off going ahead and giving themselves a chance to make the ball. It shifts in terms of aggression a little bit more. One thing I don't like is call shot rules in 10 ball, because I feel like that actually shifts it to where it is more advantageous for the player playing safe, and that the kicker is at more of a disadvantage, and that weights it so that it becomes a more defensive game. People are encouraged to play more carefully and play more safeties. And so with the jump cue, I feel like, I don't know that people's safeties have actually gotten that much better, or if they're just passing on the safeties that they couldn't lock up the cue ball and being forced into aggression more of the time.
Good thought.
Yeah, we'll talk about Jessica's comment here. Stop making the equipment easier to use. Can we say Fedor is really better than Earl or Efren with all of his easy ass equipment we have now? To that, I would say I think that the level of, personally, this is the level of play now is higher than it's ever been. There are the top 5 pool players now could go back into the 80s, into the 90s. And there wouldn't, maybe Earl, maybe Mike Siegel, maybe they can compete as like a lower tier professional pool player. But it's kind of the same way in like the Olympics back in the, Jesse Owen. He was maybe the greatest Olympian ever. But if you throw him in the field today against Usain Bolt, he wouldn't be able to even see his dust by the time that he got to the end of that 100-meter dash. And I think it's the same way. And if you look at the 80s and 90s, most of that play was done on 4.5 to 5 inch pockets. So, I mean, I think the level of precision and the selection of play today is significantly higher than it was back in the 90s. It's not taking anything away from Earl and Efren in their prime, because of course you play with the conditions that you have. You can't say, all right, well, stop making 5 inch pockets, turn everything in the world into 4 1/4 inch diamond tables. I mean, they played with the equipment that they had. But I think the selection process for the players now is so much higher than it was then. Maybe that's just me. Of course, there is always the argument that they're playing on crap cloth with crap balls too. But again, that goes to the level of precision that you have to have with all these things.
I think that I have to look at it. I'm just going to say I've always had to look at it like it's graded on a curve, because the hardest part about any sport is getting to the very top. And that regardless of what year you're in or what the technical level of skill is, going from good to great to number one, it takes a transcendent mindset, work ethic, and it's a huge achievement. And so, technically, and then when you consider it that the equipment's changed, looking at comparing players across eras using technical skills or technical, statistics, I just don't feel like that's the right view. I look at it like Mosconi transcended the game. Earl transcended the game. These people have done, they were generationally talented and things like that. So I think that Fedor, like Shane, like Earl, like Mosconi, have done amazing things in the game. And I'm not going to diminish the greats of the past, because I think on a curve, I think that getting to the top of the curve is always getting to the top of the curve. Yeah. That being said, I think that the technical skills are evolving. And then I also think that the training that the players are putting in, I think that if we looked at the input, what players are putting in, and you can sit there and say, well, part of that's due to, the evolution of training and what we've learned and having access to YouTube and resources and coaching. So of course players are able to put in more. I'm not even, even that's on a curve, because Earl probably put in more than most of the players that, competed with him. So everybody that's ever been at the top has outworked their competition. But technically speaking, these players are putting in more, and technically speaking, they are playing higher level. I just don't think that diminishes what Earl or Efren have done.
Yeah, and that's why I like to have the discussion not on who the best of all time is, but who's the greatest of all time. Because greatest doesn't necessarily take into account, how good were you as an individual. It takes into how dominating were you in respect to your peers, which I think is a better indicator of greatness and of success than somebody
But then that penalizes people like Fedor, because how are you ever going to dominate your peers with the depth of 200 deep that all play Euro Tour perfect. You know what I mean? I think it was easier for Mosconi to dominate his peers. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. It's a very, very, very deep ocean. I wouldn't get into that.
I mean, at the end of the day, I push back on that, and I say if you are that great that you dominated your peers, whatever era it was, it doesn't matter what you had available to you or what the players now have available to them. The point is you dominated. I think Tiger.
I just don't think pool can be dominated today. I think that people can have a hot year or two, but I don't think you're ever going to see somebody like Mosconi come along and dominate pool for 20 years. I don't think you'll ever see that again in pool.
Well, let's take Fedor right now. I mean, Fedor just basically busted on the scene about a year. I mean, obviously he was a world champion, but
and 2 years ago it was filler. And like Mike said, in 2 years it's going to be somebody else because the amount of it takes more than a dominant skill set. It takes a mindset which is impossible to sustain for any length of time. And we're not. And the fields are too deep with too much diversity and talent. I don't believe that anybody's going to do what Mosconi was able to do, 80 years ago.
So then
not at all, I don't think. No.
Well, so then my broader question:
this day and age compared to 30 years ago,
well, hold on, Rob.
there was nobody like you then.
Correct. But,
Nobody.
So
You couldn't
then
go find a full coach.
yeah, hold on,
and
Rob.
go to a 3-day boot camp.
Yeah. So then, Demetrius, are you saying that there's no such thing, there's no possibility then of there being like a Tiger Woods in any other sport at this point with all the information out? Because it's not just pool, right? It's everything. This information's available everywhere. So we'll never have like a Tiger Woods or maybe a Serena Williams type of player who dominates their sports for 10 to 15 years.
I've been burning to talk about this, and so now I'm going to shoehorn it in. I think that the only way to do that would be to change the format of the World Championship. So here's my plug in chess. Okay, in chess, the World Championships are decided like this. Whoever won the last World Championship gets to defend their title, and the challenger, they win a candidate tournament, and then they win the chance to challenge the world champion. And then they play this extended match, and I'm not going to go into the format, but it's over the course of like 2.5 weeks. They play 12 games. It's 1 game a day, 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. And it's a head-to-head long match over 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks to decide who's the new world champion. So let's just pretend Fedor won the world championship. He was going to guarantee to be able to defend his title. And then Matchroom has a tournament to see who gets to challenge him. And the winner of that tournament plays Fedor. And that format is not a 1 race to 11 single limb. It's we're going to play races to 25, 1 a day, 2 days on, 1 day off, and we're going to go until somebody wins 7 sets first. And if you can beat Fedor 7 out of 13 races to 25 over the course of 2.5 weeks, you earn the damn title and you are the world champion. And then you get to play again next year and somebody has to beat you that format. If you had a format like that, first of all, I think that would be the most watched and most exciting. I think that would be brilliant and awesome. And I don't understand why we don't have a real world championship and why we do a single limb coin flip. I don't get it. And I know SJM, I can hear you on AZ Billiards. He's really mad at me for saying that, but I don't get it. And I don't like a race to 100 for it all. It's no. Series, race to 25, 1 a day after day, who ends up winning the thing. If you had a format like that, then I think small skill edges and belief edges could actually be dominant to where you might see somebody dominate pool. But as long as pool is race to 11, single limb in the quarterfinals, no, nobody's going to dominate.
Well, I can tell you why that isn't possible, really. The point is, it's only going to be watched if there's a reason to watch it, right? At the end of the day, if Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal are going to be playing in the finals of the Wimbledon, you got a chance of getting me to watch it. I might watch that, and I don't give a crap about tennis. The point is these two have characters and they have profiles that have been built over the course of years from playing in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these tennis tournaments. And if you do a world championship like that, how do you actually build a profile for all of these up and coming players to be the next Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal?
Mike has an answer. I'll just say I watch every one of those chess games, and I don't watch any other chess for the most, not live anyway. Go ahead, Mike.
If I'm going to give an answer, Nate, you remember when you first came out with the podcast and you and I were talking and you had all of these ideas and I'm going to work on the Cue It Up website and there's going to be pages for every pro player and their story is going to be out there for people to read and learn about that player. That's what we need. And that falls on us. I mean, that falls on the media. The reason that the fans, well, all right, not the entire reason, but part of the reason why the fans don't know the stories behind these players is because we haven't told them those stories. There's stories out there to be told. It's on us to tell them.
Correct, but I'm not talking about you and I. I'm talking about the people that don't give a crap about the sport, right? I don't care about tennis in the slightest, but I'll tune into that because I know those stories outside of it because they've played hundreds and hundreds. I'm not talking about the average the average person who's going to watch chess anyways or that's interested in chess. I'm talking about the people outside of the industry that don't care about pool at all. How do we reach those people? And we have to build stories through these world championships where we can start learning these players.
Fair enough, but you're using that as a reason why we don't have an interesting format for the World Championship. And so, if by that rationale, if our current World Championship was drawing in millions of viewers from across all demographics, and then I'd say, okay, yeah, we don't want to wreck a winning formula, but it's not like what we've got is accomplishing that goal. So I don't really understand how that's a good argument to not have an interesting format for the World Championship.
Well, that's my point. Is it is a winning formula, right? It's a winning formula for golf. It's a winning formula for tennis. It's a winning formula. But it's not for pool because we don't really have anything marketable. Now, Matchroom is changing that, I think. But the point is we've spent the last 30 years having nothing. There's no marketing in this game. The point is there's marketing in tennis, there's marketing in golf, and it's shown to work for those two sports, especially, and even to a slightly lesser degree now, is we're seeing it with bags. We're actually seeing all of these big events with bags where you're actually learning these players' names. And
I agree. You gotta get people. I mean, 100% agree. You got to get people bought into the stories and the personalities in the game. The same thing happened with poker. Same thing happened with UFC. The only thing I'd say though is I'm talking about one tournament a year. You can have all the tournaments you want to have. I'm just saying let's treat the World Championship as if it's a World Championship and not just hey let's quick crown somebody and go to dinner. It's like I don't really understand that, and so you could accomplish even if you thought that the format necessary to do that was single limb, whatever tournaments, you could do that the rest of the year and still have a World Championship event that was a little bit different, that actually had some depth to it. Anyway, I'm a big fan of that. I'm curious what the people listening to the podcast share your comments. I wish that would happen someday. I would watch every darn I would take time off work or time off training. Anyway, I would take time off training to watch every bit of that, and I think that would be the greatest thing that's happened in pool, and I hope it happens someday.
You actually got well. You know how this started off with like you got fired up and you wanted to give your tournament of it. You got me fired up there because there's actually something that like when people say it's a race to 7 coin flip, and it's true. It is absolutely true. You are absolutely 100% right, and Matchroom doesn't deny that. But they do that for the idea of excitement, right? So the idea is if we can create pool and make it exciting, we're more likely to get the average pool playing fan to watch it. At that point in time, let's say we build up a demographic of viewers around the world, and maybe we're not irrelevant. Maybe we're to the point where we're like tennis now, where tennis is kind of fading back in relevance. And I would argue because there's no interesting players. I mean, other than Osaka, I can't name another player coming up that is interesting to me. But that's neither here nor there. I would say the idea, I think that Matchroom is doing fine as far as their short, exciting races. They're designed to bring in the average fan. But I think hopefully in the future, once they build a demographic of actual viewers and actual supporters, that they would change it to a real, because I don't think a race to 7 world champion. You're not a champion if you win a race to 7. But maybe in the future they'll change it to what it needs to be once they have.
And I'm a broken record. I'm like, hey, one tournament. It's not even a tournament. It's just one challenge match a year for the World Championship. But guess what? You can have all your other tournaments you're going to have, and then the World Championship, guess how easy that is to produce? You've got your commentary, you've got 2 players, and guess what? You're going to have this thing over the course of 2.5 weeks. You're going to have 5 or 10 different matches that get tuned in by every pool player and have huge pay-per-views and that catch every moment of that. And that you could just do that on top of all your other tournaments. It's a slam. I mean, I'll fight to the death on this one.
Well, I think it's an interesting discussion to have. I don't think.
But the main point is that's the only way we're going to see dominance is if you change it to some kind of a genuine.
I do agree with that. I think that's the only way. But I think there are more than 2 players that deserve a shot at the crown. You could probably win me over that if you if you make it an 8-person round robin event and you gave the current world champion an automatic bid as to one of those 8, and you brought in 7 other players, I think there's 7 pool players now that could at least make an argument as the best player in the world. I mean, you got Fedor, Chang Jianling, Wu Ching, Shane Van Boning, Fedor, Eklanti Kachi, Joshua Filler. I mean, Dennis Arcoyo, maybe Jason. I mean, there's 8 players. I mean, that, and that doesn't even take into account like the middle co-brother or somebody like that, or even the older co-brother. I mean,
but I think we're in agreement, and how you've set up the format, I don't know, but it's like we all want to see Fedor against Filler, and that's how this all got started. I just think how exciting would it be if Fedor was the world champion and Filler wanted to beat him for the world championship, and it was going to be a series of races to 25 over a series of days, not one race to 100 when they're both running out 40%, but like match after match. I just want it so bad.
Exciting. It would be really exciting.
If I had a wish, it would be that. It would be that.
Yeah. I think that would be really exciting. All right. Well, Rob, you got any closing thoughts?
Well, I think when Cue It Up Network becomes the venue for that championship, that won't. I think Demi's going to be part of that.
There you go, Demetrius. There's your
and
next
I hope
project.
he is. With that kind of enthusiasm.
I'm on it.
Exactly. You can do a dance. Go ahead.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we need. The sport needs that. It just needs enthusiasm on our part. Like Mike said, it's got to be up to somebody to encourage that to happen. And I can't see anybody better than the guys I'm looking at right now to do that.
I hope you're not looking at me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mr. Podcast.
I just like to play. I just like to play. But no, you never know. When you know what I've never really thought about it. I've never even talked about it because believe it or not, I've always kept my ideas to myself. I just try to play. I sign up. I'm a player. I don't have control over anything. I just learn the rules, play by the rules, do my best, and go home. But it's interesting to think that that someday the words I speak or that may have some influence beyond my own table. It's an interesting idea, and it's hard to be influential, and I don't consider myself influential. I'm here as a guest, but if the day ever comes where I get a voice, that's I'll do my best with it.
Mike, any closing thoughts?
My mind's been running for the last 10 minutes over my marketing plans for the new jump cue I'm going to make. It's going to be called the Easy Ass Jump Cue, and the commercials that I'm going to do for this cue are going to be amazing.
Can you like take a jump shot over Fedor's butt?
Oh God, no! Especially not with that tribal tattoo.
Fedor is such a good sport. Shane actually texted me during this event. I'll show you guys what he texted me after we get off live here. It's hilarious. All right, well,
aren't we lucky though? I mean, we've got the best players in the world, and we're teasing them about a tattoo. I mean, tell me another sport where that happens.
Oh yeah, there's no other sport that has the reach that At the end of the day, I mean, we're a decently big podcast in the sport of pool, but I mean, the 50,000th football podcast in the world still has 10 times more listeners than we have. I mean, this sport is to the point where, I mean, the best players in the world we get access to, and I mean, they're a text away, they're a message on Facebook away, they are a stroll down to your local pool room away. I mean, that's the access that we have to the pros it's unrivaled in any other sport, I would say. Or at least,
absolutely.
I'm sure there's plenty of other ones, but they're all just as irrelevant as us. So, yeah. Well, I guess we can probably wrap it up at this point. This has been a pretty long podcast, but there was a lot to talk about. So hopefully you guys got something out of this. And if, of course, this is going to be released as a podcast as well. This is a live video, but we'll be releasing this as a podcast as well. So if you didn't catch all of it, or if you just want to re-listen to it, it'll be in your feeds probably in the next hour or two. So, Rob, thanks for joining me, buddy.
I have one comment. I have a definition, and it's the definition of a bigamist. A bigamist is one who makes the same mistake twice. That's it.
The bigamist. Oh, is that one of
I'll
your
be thinking
jokes?
on that one for a while.
Bigamist. Bigamist is one who makes the same mistake.
I just think about George Carlin. George Carlin had a bit where he said, when somebody says you've made the same mistake twice, doesn't that imply 3 mistakes? Because for it to be the same mistake, that would have to mean that there was an original mistake. Anyway, forget it.
And then you made the
R.I.P.
mistake
George
again.
Carlin.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you
I
make the
watched-
same
I saw
mistake
George
twice,
Carlin in Minneapolis one time. Live.
so did I.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We're going to get out of here with that. So thanks for tuning
All right.
in. And I guess until next week.
See y'all.
Later,
Thanks.
guys.